We're in part 3 of our series, Kingdom Attitudes. We're looking at the Beatitudes from the beginning of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5. This is the beginning of Jesus' ministry. He's announcing the good news of his kingdom, the gospel message. His kingdom has arrived. The long-awaited king is finally here. And so the sick and the poor and the diseased and the demon-possessed and the down and out and the downcast of society, they flock to him, and he's healing them. He's setting them free. More people flock to him. Crowds flock to him. Could this really be it? Could this really be the kingdom that we have been longing for? And then in Matthew chapter 5, we read that he goes up on the mountainside. This is just like Moses so long ago. Could this really be it? Could this really be the new Moses, the new deliverer, the king that's going to deliver us and overthrow our Roman oppressors and make things right for Israel? The new lawgiver. He goes up on the mountainside and he begins his kingdom teaching. This is what my kingdom is all about. And right away, the people realize something's up. This may not be the kingdom we've been longing for. Let's read them together, these Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. God, we come before you again, and we just ask that your Spirit would lead us and guide us, that we would be the people you've called us to be. We just, our goal is to know you and make you known. Lead us, guide us in that. Amen. So today we look at kingdom attitude number 3. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And I want to start with the ending of this kingdom attitude. The meek will inherit the earth. Inherit the earth. What's that all about? Probably a better way to understand this is inherit the land. For the people of Israel, this is what they would have heard. Inherit the land. How do we inherit the land? You know, their inheritance was what? The land. In Genesis, way back in Genesis chapter 12, we read the Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. The promised land, that was their inheritance. And they had waited, and they waited, and they waited some more, and they were enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. Finally delivered. Moses delivers them with through the hand of Almighty God. They're set free, they're delivered, and then they wander through the wilderness for 40 more years because of their disobedience. And all the while, they're still longing and hoping to receive their inheritance, this land flowing with milk and honey. We read in Exodus chapter 32, remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. And eventually they received their inheritance, this incredible promised land. But of course, you know, we know the story and we talk about it on a weekly basis. They were unfaithful to the covenant. They disobeyed the law. They were unfaithful in being the holy people set apart from the nations. representing their God to the nations and drawing the nations to the one true God. They failed in that responsibility. They became just like the surrounding nations. And so what happened? They were exiled from their land. They lost their land. Now, eventually we know, most of us know, if we've followed the story in the Old Testament, that some of them returned to their land, but it was never the same after that. It was if they were just continually living in exile because they were continually being ruled by other kings and other nations. They wanted their land back. They were desperately longing for this good news. They were desperately longing to hear this gospel message of the arrival of the king. This king that would be like Moses and deliver them, set them free again, take back their land from the Romans, from their Roman oppressors. And so here's Jesus on the mountainside that day. He says, you want your inheritance back? You want your land back? And yes, they're saying, yes, Jesus, we want this. We desperately want this. We've been longing for this. Rally the troops. Prepare the horses. Shout the war cry, Jesus. Do you want your land back? Jesus says it's through meekness. It's the meek who will inherit the land. Do you understand how crazy this would have been? Is this guy crazy? What's he talking about? What kind of king is this? What kind of kingdom is this? Meekness? How are we going to get anywhere being meek? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't really hear the word meek used nowadays. It's not really a word we use a lot. Meekness, what in the world is meekness? We don't really understand it. I think it's difficult to understand. Dictionary.com describes meekness as docile, overly compliant, spiritless, yielding or tame. Merriam-Webster defines it as mild, deficient in courage, submissive and weak. And this sounds like being a pushover, right? I don't think that's what Jesus had in mind here. So what's the biblical definition of meekness? And I think we can find out, we can get a good picture of what meekness is by looking at various examples in the scriptures. And the first one I want to turn to is in Numbers chapter 12. And maybe you'll remember this story, you'll recognize this story when I begin telling you, but this is about a sibling rivalry. Way back in the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 12, Aaron and Miriam and Moses, their siblings, and Miriam and Aaron, they're challenging Moses' authority. And they're specifically challenging his choice in wife for his wife. He took a Cushite as a wife, so they're challenging him on that. They don't like her. They don't like they're challenging his authority. Why is he in charge? Why is he the one that gets to have the say in everything? And what's Moses' response? He takes his staff and he holds it. No, he doesn't. What's his response? Well, nothing at first. He doesn't respond at first. After they challenge Moses on this, here's what we read. Numbers chapter 12, verse 3. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. And some of your translations use the word meek because it's the same word. Moses was very humble. He was very meek, more than anyone on the face of the earth. This was Moses. Sometimes it's translated gentle, humble, meek, gentle. So Moses is being attacked. He's being challenged, but he's meek. What does he do about it? He doesn't act right away. He allows God to act on his behalf. And so God confronts Miriam and Aaron And here's what it says. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud. He stood at the entrance to the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When the two of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. How frightening would this be? When there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Wow, what a powerful man Moses is. He sees the Lord face to face. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And so then God punishes them by giving Miriam leprosy. And so what do? They beg for forgiveness in front of Moses. Now clearly Moses was a very powerful man. The Lord speaks to him face to face. So what should Moses have done? What did Moses do? What could he have done? Could have struck them dead. How dare you challenge my authority? I'm the one who gets to speak with God face to face. Make an example out of them. Make them beg in front of the entire assembly. What would you do in that instance if you're being attacked in the way he was? So Moses cried out to the Lord, please, God, heal her. Heal Miriam. Man, what a picture of meekness in this entire story, in this entire situation. Power under control. Power under control. Moses had a lot of power. He could have responded in so many different ways. He wasn't easily offended. He didn't jump to retaliate. Power that leaves room for God to act, for God to make things right. Self-restraint. Power that acts on behalf of the weak. Even those who are out to get you, maybe make you look bad, maybe undermine you and your authority. I mean, meekness is the opposite of self-interest and self-assertiveness. An incredible picture in the life of Moses. But of course, if we want a perfect example of meekness, we have to look to Jesus, and we see this example over and over again, and we revisit this example time and time again, but we've got to look at it because it's the ultimate example of meekness. We discover the best definition of meekness by looking at the life of Jesus. Matthew chapter 21. Matthew is quoting from the prophet Zechariah. Say to the daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, mighty, on a war horse in power, ready to conquer. No, gentle. And that's the same word. Meekness, humility, gentleness. He comes to you gentle, and he's riding on a donkey and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The most powerful one, the God of the universe, refusing to exercise his power, setting his power aside. And of course, this is another story that we know inside out. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. I mean, he's the creator God. Jesus is the one that spoke the world into existence with his powerful words. And that he had come from God, was returning to God. So he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing. He wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. Is this the action of a powerful person? The most powerful one in the room, the most powerful one on the planet, yet choosing to serve the weak and undeserving. And when they come to arrest Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Peter whips out his sword and cuts the ear of the servant of the high priest, we read, put your sword back in its place, Jesus said to him, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? I've got the power. I've got it. I can handle this, Peter. But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? The one who had the power to retaliate, the one who had power to defend himself. I mean, so much power at his disposal. He uses his power for the benefit of the weak. He actually heals the ear of the servant. He uses his power for a greater purpose, which leads to the best definition of meekness that we have. And we come to this verse over and over and over again, these verses from Philippians chapter 2, who being in the very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Power under control. Power under control. Setting his power aside. Power that leaves room for God to act, for God's greater purpose. Power that acts on behalf of the weak. You know, I am so thankful that Jesus did this for me. Aren't you? But Jesus, how is this going to win back our land? How are we going to take back the land, Jesus? I mean, this looks an awful lot like weakness. I mean, kingdoms don't advance through meekness. Kingdoms advance through might and control and domination, not meekness. This is not going to work. And once again, and this is just a consistent message of Jesus over and over and over again, Jesus was saying, my kingdom is different. My kingdom is so different. My kingdom's an upside-down kingdom. It's not like the kingdoms of this world. It's not like any kingdom you've ever experienced. True power is shown through what looks like weakness to the world, but in reality is the power of God at work in his kingdom citizens when they continually lay down their lives day in and day out and die to themselves over and over and over again. That's where power lies. That's where true power lies. And we've heard this message over and over again, haven't we? For most of us, this isn't new. And we don't get a lot of good examples throughout the scriptures of meekness and we don't get a lot of examples in our world today. I mean, but you just look throughout the scriptures, it's actually a picture of the opposite of meekness. I mean, you start in the very beginning, you look at, Adam and Eve, they were given so much power, right? Power to rule and subdue the earth on behalf of their creator, to represent their creator as image bearers. And they chose the way of self instead. They chose the way of self. And what happened? They're exiled from the Garden of Eden. They lose their land. They lost their land. The people of Israel, such privilege. They were chosen to be a kingdom of priests, to represent God to the rest of the world, to the rest of the nations. Instead, they chose the way of self. And what happened? They're exiled from their land. They lost their land. But then Jesus comes along. Jesus comes to make a way, but he comes to demonstrate the way. And what does he choose? He chooses the way of the cross. The way of the cross. But Jesus, we still don't get it. How are we going to win back our land? How are we going to take back our land? And Jesus was saying, this is way bigger than you, Israel. It's way bigger. It's a way bigger kingdom. It's a worldwide, global kingdom. I'm not just talking about your land. I'm talking about all the land. I'm talking about the whole earth. And that's where we come in. His people, his church, his kingdom citizens. What's our inheritance? What are we longing for? What are we desperately longing for? Our inheritance is a renewed and restored creation where he makes all things new. He makes us new. He makes us new, and he makes all things new. Renewed creation. That's what we're anticipating. That's what we're looking forward to. And this is huge. This is really huge. As kingdom citizens, here's the thing. We give the world a glimpse of that. We give the world and the people around us a picture of our inheritance to come, of what's coming. As we are being renewed and as we are being restored day in and day out. He's making all things new, right? And the world is asking, and the people in our community and the people in our schools and our workplaces and our neighborhoods, they're asking, how can we know that? And we look around and we just see evil in our world, and it seems like it's getting worse and worse. How can we really know that God's going to make all this right again? How can we really know that it doesn't seem possible? How are we going to know that he's going to make it right, that he is making it right, that he's at work making it right? And we can stand up and say, look at me. Just look at me. Look at what he's doing in me, in my life. He's restoring me. He's renewing me. Day in and day out as I become more and more like Jesus. Look at me. It's possible. And as a church and as a people, look at us. Look at us. Look at what he's doing. Look at his bride. Look at his church. He's making us new. It's possible. It's coming. This is our inheritance. This is the new creation reality. You can see that. It's coming. But here's the thing. It's the way of the cross. It's the way of the cross that makes that a reality. We want to sidestep the cross, and we want to get to the resurrection, and we want to get to victory, and we want to get to all the ruling and reigning on behalf of the King. But it's by dying. It's by dying and then rising, dying and then rising, dying and rising to a new way of living each and every day, reflecting the image of Jesus in our world. It's not through power and might. It's through meekness, just like Jesus. Now, I have a lot of conversations with people about this kind of stuff. I wrestle with this stuff, and we talk about what does this really look like in the world? What does this look like in our lives? And I have all kinds of just great conversations with other followers of Christ and with other pastors. And so sometimes I want to create that conversation here at Living Grace. And we've done this in the past, but it's been a while. And I want to do it again this morning. I want to try to have a conversation about what meekness looks like today. So I'm going to invite Brian Beeden back up. Brian and I, Brian Biedenbach. And we're going to have a conversation. He and I talk about this stuff all the time anyway. And I don't know if you'll like this or not, but we're going to open it up for you to participate if you want. But I have 3 questions that will kind of lead our conversation and our discussion. So the first one's this. What might meekness look like in our everyday relationships? Second question. Is meekness being a pushover? Getting walked all over? I think this is a tough one. Like, where's the balance in all this? Final question, what might meekness look like in our society today? The worship team, you can come up, prepare for one last song, and I just want to lead into that by sharing Matthew. In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart," or meek and lowly of heart. Same word. "And you'll find rest. You'll find rest for your souls." This was Jesus' attitude. Come to me, you're going to find rest. I'm meek. I'm gentle. I'm humble. The people in our lives, do they feel like they're free to come to us and say, wow, we can find rest when we're with you because you're meek, you're gentle, you're humble.